Florida State has to get out of the ACC. Everyone agrees with that. But what nobody knows is how will it happen? Well, we've done some digging. We've had some conversations. And we believe that we have the best and easiest path for Florida State to get to another conference. I'm sure the comments will be filled up with people telling me why I'm wrong or why another way would be better. But we've spoken with some people that we trust. And this is our idea or plan that we think Florida State could legitimately get out of the ACC. We'll go step by step in this video on how the ACC ideally can dissolve and end the grant of rights, leaving Florida State to move on to greener pastures. I know there are different theories, but what all is out there right now? Well, first, there's the discussion around a buyout. Florida State could pay the $120 million exit fee and leave the conference. But the issue that presents is the media rights that the ACC would still hold on to and still have through the grant of rights through the year 2036. Not really a super viable option. It would take that $120 million number, and I've heard estimates of up around $400 or $500 million would be the total cost to FSU. Not really something I think that they can do right now. Not really something I think the SEC or the Big Ten would really collaborate on and work on. There's a possibility, and people have talked about maybe the ESPN would help renegotiate that. I'm not sure. Until I see it, I don't know that I necessarily believe it. There's the idea of maybe challenging the ACC grant of rights in court. I really don't have any insight on how that would go down. At the end of the day, Florida State agreed to the deal. They're bound by contract, and that's going to be something that's tough to get out of. It seems daunting at this point. I've heard people talk about it. I've heard people talk about what would need to go into it, what would need to happen, but I don't know that that's something that's realistic right now. Then there's the option, the third option of unequal revenue sharing, where Michael Alford came out recently and said that there's something that needs to happen as Florida State contributes about 15% of the TV revenue to the conference and gets about 7% in exchange. I've heard the number is that Clemson gives about 14%. So you've got two entities bringing in around 30% of the revenue and getting back about 14% of the sharing. This is not something that I would anticipate the lesser teams in this conference agreeing to. I don't really see why they would give up money, though they understand that Florida State and Clemson are the ones running things right now. I just can't see that happening. That leaves us with a fourth option, and the one that I think is most viable, dissolution. The ACC needs to dissolve, and you need 8 teams to make it happen. FSU insiders and commentators agree this is the most likely path for Florida State to get out of the ACC. It's not court, it's not a buyout up front right now, and it's probably not anything to do with unequal revenue sharing. Though, even if that was to happen, I still think Florida State would look to get out of the ACC. But how does dissolution happen? How does the conference actually dissolve? We'll take you through step by step how it could all go down. Just before we go through those steps, I want to give some love to our friends over there at Gramco. We appreciate our friends over at Gramco who have been great supporters for over a year now at Double Fries No Slaw. You can shop today at thegramco.com. You can use code TJ25. The gummies are up on the screen. If you've not tried them, they're phenomenal. Everything from fruit punch, watermelon, blue raspberry, and green apple. They are the best on the market. 25 milligram THC. They pack a punch. Know your dose. But again, TJ25 at checkout. Gramco and the folks over there have been great to us. You got to give them a try if you haven't just yet. They are phenomenal. Founded by Noles, and they are great. Let's go through it. Let's talk about it right now. How could Florida State end up getting out of this conference? Well, I think the first thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to work with Clemson. And they're going to have to work with Clemson because they're the two big dogs. They're the teams that other conferences find attractive. Any other conference in the nation would welcome both Florida State and Clemson to its ranks if they didn't have such a large price tag attached to them right now. Florida State and Clemson need to come out and publicly announce the following. We've got a 7-step, I promise it won't take that long, but we have a 7-step process for how this would all go down and how this would work. But Florida State and Clemson would need to come out and announce that they are forming a group with the intentions to explore options available in other conferences. What does this do? It puts the ACC on notice. Michael Alford's already done that. Michael Alford has already put the ACC on notice. And this would go an even step further than that by letting them know, hey, we didn't get what we wanted with the unequal revenue sharing. We didn't get what we want from this conference with their terrible TV deal. We are going on the offensive, and we're trying to form a group that is exploring leaving. Number two, who would that group consist of? Well, that group would consist of the first 8 ACC teams authorized to join by both founding members. So basically, who do Clemson and Florida State say is allowed to join this group? Florida State would work with the other 6 or more members, as you need a simple majority. Florida State and Clemson have all of the leverage and would determine how this process goes and who's a part of it. As long as Florida State and Clemson approve you to join this group, you are in it. Number 3, what will happen? The group will consider all conference options on the table. That's everything from the SEC and Big Ten, which obviously are the most attractive and where most people would like to end up, but also the Big 12, the American, and other conferences around the country, because all conference options will be needed to pull this off. The group itself, number 4, will cooperate with each other to secure the best conference deal possible for their institution. Some schools may not have the resources and the options and the funds and things available like Florida State, Clemson, and maybe even to a lesser degree, Miami have at their disposal. And so I think Florida State, Clemson, again, possibly Miami, some others, being able to help and being able to assist some of the other conference schools in these negotiations and in these possible deals that are coming up would be huge, and it would provide a really big bargaining chip. Hey, your conference wants this team to come in or that team to come in, but can you sweeten the pot? Maybe Florida State agrees to a home and home with someone. Maybe Clemson agrees to a home and home with somebody in the American so that another one of the ACC teams can get over there. I think those kind of multi-team negotiations are what could really help this go much further. Number 5, once all members of the group have secured an agreement to join a new conference, they will coordinate to dissolve the ACC conference as we know it. Everyone's afraid to move out on their own right now and do anything, and Michael Alford's the only one with the intestinal fortitude, we'll say, to go out and make public statements and say things. But by collectively working together and being a majority, this group would not feel like they're out alone on an island. It would be very well known to the other conferences that they were negotiating with what was happening. The ACC or the Big Ten or the American or the Big 12, whichever conference we're considering, would know that this is a group effort, a collective effort that they're dealing with in good faith, that XYZ team would be coming over because this plan has been laid out by the group. Of the 8 teams, it is possible that some teams land in a new conference which exceeds the value currently being paid by the ACC. However, others may not exceed the current value of the ACC. If a team was to go to the American or a lesser conference, maybe a Pac-12, not a Power 5 conference, their value of their deal may not exceed that of the ACC. This is a common misconception. A lot of people say that there are not enough landing spots. That lie has been repeated over and over and over and over again. And what they mean to say is that there are not enough landing spots in the Big Ten and the SEC. But if you're a team that's in the bottom of this conference and you know that the ACC is dissolving, would it be not better to go to one of the lesser conferences than be stuck in no man's land by yourself or in a terrible ACC without a Clemson and a Florida State and a Miami to carry you? If I'm Boston College or if I'm Syracuse, am I not looking at the American if that's my only option? If I'm Pitt and can't get into the Big Ten or can't get into the SEC, am I not looking at the Big 12 as an option? There's no way to think that the Big Ten or the SEC could take on 4 teams each, but I think it's very realistic that they could take 2 each. The SEC takes on Clemson and Florida State. The Big Ten takes on Virginia and Miami. And then you've got 4 teams left. 2 join the American, 2 join the Big 12, and we're done. Now, why would a team in the ACC agree to go to a conference and help out Florida State and Clemson when they're going to be making less money? And that's the issue here. Florida State and Clemson, Miami, they're going to go to conferences that are going to make them more money. But if you're Syracuse and you're the 8th team, or you're UVA, or you're a team that isn't maybe one of the most prestigious, what if you go to a conference that's making you less money? This is where I think negotiating and where I think Michael Alford and other ADs in this conference can absolutely put their hard hats on and get this done. First of all, the deal in the ACC is not very good anyway. And so going to a different conference shouldn't be that much of a drop-off in money. But here's how you get around that. The members who exceed the value agree to share the cost of paying the difference for those who do not exceed the value until 2036, which is the year that the original ACC contract would have ended. Let's back that up. So let's say your teams are SEC, Florida State and Clemson. Big 10, Miami, and let's say Virginia. Big 12, another payday. Let's say that Pittsburgh and North Carolina State take those. You're going to have two teams that probably end up in the American or a lesser conference making less money than they would have made in the ACC. Those 6 teams that got a sweetened deal, that got more revenue, can combine their profits to make up that difference between what those last 2 teams would have been making and what they're currently making through 2036. I think that's a better deal for those bottom 2 teams because they know the ACC is going to end anyway. And so there's no reason to just stay in the ACC when you get paid the same amount. The ACC is going to end by or before 2036. And so you might as well get that guaranteed revenue from teams that are going to be making more up until that time. It's also a much better deal for those top 6 teams that do go to increased revenue deals because though they'll have to give some of that revenue back to those bottom 2 teams, they're splitting it with 5 other teams, and they're also making a lot more money while doing it. Side note, they're also basically already doing that by carrying the lion's share of the weight in the ACC. It wouldn't be an astronomical amount, and the amount by joining the other conferences that you're going to would far exceed this. This is an outside-the-box strategy. It's an outside-the-box thought concept, but I think it's something that could absolutely work and would be an answer for all of the teams in the conference. Now, all of this happens, and all of that info is dropped. Florida State and Clemson's plans are revealed, and that 7-step process would very quickly take shape, and it would very quickly take order. The ACC would be dissolved in very short order. The grant of rights would then end, and Florida State, Clemson, and the other teams in this conference that deserve a better conference would be free. Florida State would be able to leave the ACC because there would be no more ACC. Do they wind up in the SEC or the Big 10? I'm not sure. That's a topic for another day. I know there are pros and cons for both. But what are the chances that this happens? I really don't know. It would take collaboration on both FSU's and Clemson's parts. But I've run it by a few people, and a few people that you all respect and know very well, and the answer I've gotten back is just a thought-provoking one, but one that they're thinking on nonetheless. Florida State has been very vocal through their AD, Alford. I think that he's done a great job of leading this, and it would take some collaboration, like we just said, on both Clemson's and Florida State's part. Can 8 teams find a landing spot? As we said earlier, I think they can. The misconception is there's not enough room in the SEC and the Big 10 to get everyone there, but not everyone's going there. North Carolina State, North Carolina, Duke, Boston College, Syracuse, I think they'd do well to get into any conference right now. I think this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but I believe the best way for Florida State to get out, and the quickest and easiest, is to basically form an alliance with Clemson and then try and form an alliance with 6 more teams. Make it public. Put the pressure on the ACC. Let the other conferences know what you're doing. Let the fan support get behind you, and you may find yourself out of the ACC faster than you ever expected. We've got more information, more insight on what may happen here as we've had a couple of conversations with folks close to the situation and the program. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you this content and tell you more about what's going on with conference realignment at Florida State. We'll talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.